I'm Pete Beklinski with Campaign Life Coalition. A Uganda Member of Parliament, along with a Nigerian representative, told a Canadian Federal Foreign Affairs Committee on March 7th that Africa does not need nor want contraception and abortion exported from Western nations to develop, but instead they want education, housing, and clean drinking water. Uganda Member of Parliament Lucy Akello appeared in person to the Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs and International Development to discuss the topic of sexual and reproductive health and rights of women globally.
Like you rightly said, I'm Lucy Akello, a Member of Parliament from Uganda. Africa has a long history of colonization, just like Canada, of people, foreign governments, foreign-led organizations telling us what is good for us or what our priorities should be. I will speak from the context of an African woman, mother, and a legislator. I'll speak first about abortion. Our people are still loyal to religious truths and cultures. Canada, too, has its beautiful cultures. It seems no matter how much money will be spent on making abortion look good, our people still see through the money, the marketing, and mass education. The women I represent are able to see through this. We believe life starts from conception. And where I come from, once conception takes place, it is life. And even when you get a miscarriage, that life is given a decent burial, irrespective of the sex. Africa generally finds abortion pregnant. To the woman I represent, the term family planning is synonymous to contraception. This is how it has been sold to them. When one says they are on family planning, they mean they are on contraception. But women are hurting from the side effects of hormonal contraception, and they talk about it with each other. Contraceptive side effects are a major deterrent to consistent use of contraception, and women who experience bleeding specific side effects are most likely to make a choice of contraceptive discontinuation and switching. On the issue of comprehensive sexuality education, the parents I represent see comprehensive sexuality education as assault to the health and innocence of children. Mr. Chairman, in the interest of time, I recommend that the Canadian government and this parliament sees more into keeping the girl child at school as opposed to giving them contraceptives. Where I come from, there is a push to even put girls as young as 13, 14 on contraception. What does this do to a young girl? I also recommend that you respect Uganda as a sovereignty. Thank you so much.
Earlier in the meeting, Elizabeth Sully of the pro-abortion Guttemacher Institute lamented to the committee about the overturn of Roe in the United States in the spring of 2022, causing risk of what she called backsliding on the progress Western nations have achieved in Africa and other countries in pushing contraception and abortion through SRHR programs, namely so-called sexual and reproductive health programs.
We're also at risk of backsliding on the progress that we've achieved with a global opposition to SRHR that's emboldened by the recent overturning of Roe in the United States. The second point I want to make to the committee is that global leadership is needed now to protect and expand on the gains that we have achieved in safe abortion access. People around the world have and need abortions. That is not going to change. Globally, more than 60% of all unintended pregnancies end in abortion. That's 73 million abortions annually. Legal restrictions do not stop abortions from happening. We find no evidence that the abortion rate differs in countries where abortion is restricted versus where it is legally allowed. Abortion restrictions instead lead to more unsafe abortions.
With all respect, Elizabeth Sully, there is no such thing as a safe abortion. It's simply a lie. The sole purpose of abortion is to kill a human being prior to birth. The procedure has failed if it does not result in a dead baby. Abortion is thus never safe for the preborn child. And abortion is not safe for the mother either. Both surgical and chemical abortions harm women on many levels, including physically, emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually. So stop telling lies about abortion to try to make it look like something good by calling it safe, when it is especially a dangerous and deadly procedure for the smallest members of the human family. Preborn babies are persons deserving of human rights just like everyone else. The Liberal government under pro-abortion leader Justin Trudeau has pledged hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars to export contraception and abortion to developing countries. It is resulting in a creeping genocide of the African people. By 2023 to 2024, through its feminist international assistance policy, the Trudeau government will be committing $700 million per year for sexual and reproductive health and rights, a euphemism for abortion on demand, age-inappropriate sex education, and the promotion of gender ideology in developing countries. This budget funnels millions of dollars to abortion advocacy groups such as International Planned Parenthood Federation, Marie Stopes International, Women Deliver, and others that provide contraception and abortion and work to influence local institutions and legislatures to liberalize laws where abortion remains illegal. Campaign Life Coalition highlighted in its 2021 documentary called Obsessed, Canada's Coercive Diplomacy, how the Trudeau Liberals use the carrot of humanitarian aid to coerce developing nations into accepting Western priorities of contraception, abortion, homosexuality, and the early sexualization of children. Seemingly aware of this trend, MP Garnet Genuis from Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan, who is vice chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, asked the Uganda MP an important question.
Big concept in international development right now is the issue of localization, listening to and responding to the needs of local people and applying those without bringing in predetermined Western priorities. What are the development priorities of local women in Uganda who you represent, and how can we ensure that our development assistance relates to local priorities instead of bringing in predetermined Western priorities?
For long, I worked with civil society before joining politics. And one thing that was so good at that time, when the donors would come to us, they would ask you, what are your values? What does your culture say about this, this, and this? And they will say, we will fit into your culture. But now things have changed. What is now happening is you must fit, the donors come and tell you, you must fit in our values, you must fit in our culture, which is really for me wrong, because if you want to help me, come build what I have, as opposed to making me fit in your priorities. Right now, like I said, our priority is to keep the girl at school. And when we keep the girl at school, study has shown that when a girl stays at school, she will definitely stay out of unwanted pregnancy, and we will not need abortion for her. We will not need contraception for her. That is, for me, the priority, the development priority that I think we need. We need more health centers, functional health centers for our women and our children, as opposed to more money for contraceptives and family planning and abortion.
At one point during the meeting, the researcher from the pro-abortion Guttemacher Institute, revealed the real reason why abortion must be made available in the developing world, especially in countries where it is currently illegal. She was responding to a question from NDP MP Heather McPherson, who is a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee.
I think that's just a reality, and contraceptive methods fail. They work great, a lot of them work very well, but they all fail at some point or another, and so we need a second line of defense, and that's safe abortion.
Pro-life advocates have pointed out the link between contraception use and an increase in the abortion rate. Instead of decreasing abortion, widespread use of contraception goes hand in hand with an increase in the abortion rate, something that financially benefits the abortion industry. Former Texas abortion clinic owner Carol Everett revealed in 2014 how the industry promotes contraception, knowing full well that it will lead to more abortions. Also addressing the Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs was Dr. Teresa Okafor, director of the Foundation for African Cultural Heritage. She joined Uganda MP Akello in denouncing Western ideological colonization happening in Africa.
As one who has represented my government as a delegate of the United Nations New York for 4 years, and one who has worked closely with the African group, we have been deeply concerned by the paternalism that interferes in another person's affairs cohesively or through incentives motivated by claims that the person will be better off. This handout approach, Mr. Chair, is what continues to perpetuate beggary, hunger, illnesses, oppression, and modern-day slavery in Africa. Support for the African woman should not be one which strips her of a right to family stability, a right to raise her intellectual tone and moral compass, a right to economic empowerment and social inclusivity, aka equity and proper healthcare. These rights are largely ignored and substituted with unsolicited rights to abortion, safe abortion, whatever that means, contraception, comprehensive sexuality education, to mention a few.
Dr. Okafor pointed out, contrary to the non-African speakers at the committee meeting, that there is, quote, no international right to abortion, unquote. She said that it is increasingly plain that foreign funding under Canada's feminist international assistance policy is becoming less about aid, empowerment, healthcare, and poverty reduction, and more about what she called ideological colonization.
I am aware that many African countries are overflowing with condoms and contraceptions from the West sent to us to fulfill a fictitious unmet need for contraception, when what we really need is water, food, housing, employment, quality education that can break the intergenerational cycle of poverty. We need what can help mothers and children, who are key and central to everything that takes a nation to develop. They're the building blocks of a nation. We need what can help them develop, and not necessarily prioritizing sex all the time, because I see that there is an obsession to sexualize our continent, and that is the problem that we're having at the United Nations, when arguments should be focused on good governance, on employability, on quality education, on food, on water, on clean water, on nutrition, adequate nutrition.
MP Garnet Genuis asked Dr. Okafor if foreign governments were involved in performing or supporting illegal abortions in African countries where abortion is outlawed.
Unfortunately, foreign governments have been supporting abortion in African states where abortion is illegal.
Thank you, ma'am. Just because of time constraints, I wonder if you could name specific organizations that you're aware of, specific governments that are funding it. Any of those details in the 45 seconds or so I have left would be very helpful.
Thank you so much. International Planned Parenthood.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, did you have more to add, or?
International Planned Parenthood, and I can also add International Feminist Assistive Policy is behind most of it, Global Affairs Canada.
What Dr. Okafor called the paternalistic and imperialist approach was on full display when Liberal MP Robert Oliphant from Don Valley West decided to address Uganda MP Akello's presentation. Preaching from his white colonial soapbox, Oliphant stated,
I am going to address some issues with respect to the Member of Parliament Akello's presentation today. With all due respect and fully understanding the sovereignty issue, the world community has decided that human rights are universal. They transcend political boundaries. They're indivisible and they're interdependent. There is a bill called the Anti-Homosexuality Bill that is presented in your Parliament. It also has definitions of homosexuality that are outdated and have no bearing in science, in religion, or in law. As a Christian pastor, it is an offensive bill, and I would hope that you read it very carefully to understand that it would isolate Uganda from the rest of the world.
Yes, you're right. Human rights are universal. But the UN declaration, the original one, if you go and look through how everything has changed, we now make definitions of what human rights are based on what now we want. Even today, I can wake up and decide to define human rights the way I want. If you look through the definition of human rights, it has changed over the period from the original definition of what we knew as human rights. I was invited here to talk about the topic of sexual and reproductive health for women globally. I have done that. If you want us to talk about the anti-homosexuality bill, we will talk about it when my sovereign nation of Uganda has made a decision on it. And rest assured, no one is going to be killed because every life matters.
Uganda is to be highly praised for strongly valuing life, family, and marriage. And MP Akello and Dr. Okafor are to be lauded for their courage in facing the Canadian government and telling it to stop destroying the future of the African people. Canada certainly has lots to learn from the African people. For Campaign Life Coalition, I'm Pete Baklinski.
Make life win in Canada. No compromises, no exceptions, no excuses. Go to campaignlifecoalition.com.